Good morning, everyone. Thank you for attending. My name is Rich Belando. We are going to talk today about ALC series and our webinar today, amplified loudspeaker controllers and programming your ALC using ArmonaPlus. Again, my name is Rich Belando. I am an applications engineer with Biamp, based in Chester, so the Loudspeaker Solutions Group. Happy to be presenting today for you guys. So today, what we're going to talk about, we will take a look at the ALC Advantage, or what I call the ALC Advantage, our power processing and limiting. We'll take a quick look at the hardware and a quick overview of applications. We'll do basic network settings and amplifier discovery. We will take a look at updating firmware, which is a big topic with these ALC amplifiers. And then we will get into system design using the simple add link match. We'll talk about what we call the option arrow. And then we'll go deeper in. We'll look at some input priorities. We'll adjust the output matrix. While we're in the amplifier, we'll take a look at some additional system tools. And then if we have more time, we'll do additional design examples, show you guys some screenshots of some larger systems, some more complex designs. And then, like I said, at the end, if there's any questions, we'll try to get to some. But at any time, if you need technical support after this webinar, please reach out to support@biamp.com. Okay. The ALC Advantage, power processing and limiting. So the nice thing about these ALCs, they include a complete loudspeaker library. The loudspeaker library, you select your loudspeaker model, your application, and the system sets the appropriate 1024 tap FIR, linear phase DSP loudspeaker processing, and multi-stage limiters. Okay, so just by loading the loudspeaker preset, you're loading all the FIRs, you're loading all the limiter presets. Okay, each preset includes loudspeaker specific power impedance values. Okay, so the software will automatically calculate and display power needs, all your available headroom on each output channel, plus the total power draw and headroom available from the power supply. Again, all this gets loaded when you load a speaker preset. Your multiple stages of limiting, your RMS, your peak, and your clip limiters. All right, so that's really the advantage of using ALC. We're using all the processing power for the FIR processing, and obviously the power to power the loudspeakers. All right. Quick overview here. So there's 3 models in the line. You have the ALC 404D, that's a 4-channel at 400 watts per channel. Power match to most of the community R series line, a lot of the smaller I series compacts, and most, if not all, of the DeSono loudspeakers. All right. Also bridgeable. You can bridge this down to 2 channels, 800 watts per channel. Okay, so this is a great option for larger multi-zone 7100 volt distributed loudspeaker systems. We use this amplifier a lot. It's become very popular. Not as popular as the 1604. 1604 is probably the most popular one in the line because it's matched power-wise to most of the large R series. Your larger I series, IP6 and IP8 point source, very popular in the IV6 modular arrays when we're using Entasys FRs and LF systems. And we do bridge this a lot down to 2 channels to get a healthy 3200 watts at 4 ohms. So a lot of subwoofer systems, a lot of R2 max, low frequency side of the device needs a bridge channel of 1604. And again, probably the most popular one in the line. The third one is the 3202. Okay, that's a 2-channel at 3200 watts. Again, very handy when using with IV6 modular arrays, high power for I series subwoofers. This one is happier down in lower impedance land. So large venue applications, like the example on the bottom of the screen, you can take 3 600 watt devices, get a lower than comfortable 2.6 impedance measurement, and you can power these off all 1 channel of an ALC 3202. So again, a lot of flexibility. You can also bridge this down to 6400 watts at 4 ohms. So a lot of power available for larger applications. All right, so how is this all controlled? How do we program these amplifiers? That's primarily what we're going to talk about today when we get into the ArmonaPlus system design software. Now, ArmonaPlus is a PowerSoft software. PowerSoft is the OEM provider for the ALC amplifiers. So ArmonaPlus is the suite that controls all of the PowerSoft amplifiers. Okay, so all the other OEM partners, their own models of amplifiers, as well as our ALCs. So there are a lot of features and options and things you can get into and get into trouble inside ArmoníaPlus. So today we're going to show you just a quick, basic, simple workflow of how we typically program the ALCs. Okay. First thing we want to do when we get into the software, and I'll show you this live in the software when we jump over, but I have some slides here to kind of highlight the key points. The marketplace. So in order to get into the marketplace, PowerSoft is going to ask you to create a My PowerSoft account. Very easy, email address, contact information. That'll allow you to stay in contact with new releases and firmwares and stuff like that, for not just for ArmoníaPlus. Okay, so once you're logged in and they see you in the system, you'll have access to what they provide. Now we do push the libraries and the AMP files to that server, so that's why they are downloadable from there. So you must have the ALC amplifier models as well as the loudspeaker preset libraries downloaded from the marketplace into ArmoníaPlus before we can program ALCs. And that's kind of the first step issue. A lot of people will connect to these. They'll see the amplifiers as unrecognized devices. Without the amp models downloaded, you won't be able to program, you won't be able to connect to them. So that is a very important first step to take a look at, all right? Secondly, network settings, DHCP. So I know a lot of us are using different systems. We're connecting to different networks. IT has us locked down on things every once in a while. We like starting at DHCP. So these amplifiers will connect easily as long as your system is set to DHCP. Once we have that confirmed, we're going to go to the configuration communication manager inside preferences. And there's a couple ways to get to that in the software. And again, I'll show you this. Easiest way, bottom right-hand side of the screen, there's a little gear next to the British flag. That'll open up preferences, second tab, communication manager. And we're going to turn on the ports that we're going to use. So this allows ArmoníaPlus to talk to your network. All right, so whatever network ports you are using on your system that are connected to the network that the amplifiers are on, and additionally the Dante network as well, you want to make sure those ports are turned on in ArmoníaPlus, all right, for communication. Now, another important step here. When we start ArmoníaPlus, you will see the splash screen. It'll say, welcome back, Richard, because I'm logged in. And you're going to see two options there. You're going to see a new project for live sound, and you're going to see a new project for installed systems. Now, I know most of the Biamp people and most of our customers and end users are primarily doing installed systems, and that's great. Again, as I mentioned, ArmoníaPlus is the software suite that controls all of PowerSoft's amplifiers and their accessories. So PowerSoft does have a complete control system built into ArmoníaPlus, especially the 2.0. As soon as they went over to 2.0, they introduced all these features. So they have touch panel controls, they have wall plates, they have the web views app, they have the system control app, so you can control Android and Apple devices. For our ALC systems, we are not going to select an install system. Okay, why is that? Because we don't use any of these applications with the ALC. If you are familiar with PowerSoft and you use some of their other products, by all means, you can integrate ALC within its limitations into these accessories. But for our purposes for programming and using ALC, we are always going to choose a live sound project. So I highly recommend first-time users, guys who are not familiar with the software, don't choose an install system because it gives you a couple other options that might trip you up, okay? So installed, we're not gonna do, we are gonna do live sound. So new project for live sound. The ALC is your amplification, your FIR processing, your protective limiting, and your EQ. If we need control, signal routing, distribution management, we're gonna use Tessera for all that stuff, all right? So let the ALCs power the speakers, let them do the FIR processing, okay? Moving on, let's now take a look at ArmoníaPlus. So I'm going to switch over to the software here and see if my tabs work. And there we go. So we are now inside the software. So when you launch, you will see this splash screen. And like I said earlier, we're not going to choose an install system. We are going to choose live sound. And we're simply going to hit OK. And I had a system open earlier. All right, so you see 2 blank screens. Now, workspace is where most of your stuff is going to get done. Design and add. Let's take a look at the marketplace. So when we're logged in, A+ logo, top left corner of the screen, we're going to go to here and we're going to go to marketplace, first step. And what we're going to do, we're simply going to type in community, and these are going to come up. If these were not loaded, there'd be a link to do these downloads. Since they are loaded, there's a trash can if I want to get rid of them. So these are the 4 presets that you do need to load into ArmoníaPlus the first time you open up the software. This is going to be the speaker preset library. This is going to be the amp model for the 1604, the model for the 404, and the amp model for the 3202. Once these are in, like I said, if they were not here, there'd be links to download them. Once they're in the software, we can now recognize, connect, and load ALC amplifiers. All right, close that. Second thing, communication. Little gear on the bottom. You will open up Communication Manager. So I have my Ethernet 4, which is my USB controller there for my Ethernet. Gonna make sure that's on. I'm gonna have Dante on that as well. And Wi-Fi, I usually leave Wi-Fi on just because it's there. And we're gonna hit apply. So if you had other networks and you can actually connect more than one to the network, I've done that on this machine where I've had a NIC card as well, just for testing purposes, multiple RJ45s going over to the switch. They should all connect, all right? As long as everything is on DHCP. Gonna hit apply, we're gonna hit okay. Now, when we do that, if we just want to quickly jump ahead and check and make sure we are getting network activity, and when we design, we go from add to link to match. So we can just jump right over to match. And you see that I have 2 already discovered. I'm going to clear all, pretend that didn't happen. So we go to match, and then the thing you're going to do, you're going to hit discover. Now, when discover pops up, it's going to show the amplifiers that are physically on the network. So these are physical amplifiers that I have in the rack next to me. And you will notice if I hover over them, it'll show the connection type, it'll show my device address, and it'll show my firmware. So the 404 there has firmware 110.0.146, but it looks like the 1604 has an older firmware, all right? So Armonia is telling me, by making this red, that I have an outdated device. So I can simply click here to upgrade, and this takes us over to the system list tab. Now the system list tab shows amplifiers. Since there's no physical amplifiers connected right now, that's blanked out. We don't use powered speakers inside this other devices, okay? So you'll see that the firmware is red, which means it needs to be updated. Update to version 110.0.146. We're gonna go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna click on this device, or I could select all outdated, and that would do the same thing. And as long as we have a connection, we can hit update. Now, the thing is, when you're connected, talking to the server, okay, this firmware update will be available. Okay, so an internet connection is important when we're working in the field. We highly recommend when you're programming these amplifiers for the first time, do them in the shop when you have a secure internet connection, and we can get onto the server and we can download and do the updates. Trying to do this out in the field, tethering off a cell phone, if you're locked into an IP range or the IT guy's not letting you dial out or get in, that's an issue. So before you go out to the field, before you're in the press box, hooking these amplifiers up and doing these updates, unbox the amps, update them all in the shop, make sure they all have the current firmware before we get going. Now, the nice thing, once the firmware is installed into the software, it'll remember that. So then if you start going from site to site, the firmware is retained within the software, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and update this, and it'll walk you through, update device, go ahead and click update, and you'll see that now this is uploading, and we're gonna let that cook in the background while we lay out a system design, all right? So going back to workspace, in the design tab, and then in the add tab, all right? So here's where we start, and it's very simple. We know we're gonna add an amplifier, okay? So you'll see that there's power soft options here, but We're not going to use any of those. We're using the Community Professional ALCs. Since we downloaded those ALC files, they are now available to load. All right, so in my system design here, I know I'm going to use a 404D. I'm going to select the model. I'm going to select the quantity. We're only going to do one for right now. You don't have to rack. That'll create some other options later. And we're just going to hit add and close. You'll see in the left-hand side of the screen, I get an amplifier that shows up. Now, if I want to make this bigger because I'm visually impaired, I can hit the buttons here and just make that bigger, or I can just hold Control and scroll my mouse to make the device bigger. And that becomes important later when we link output channels. All right, so I have my 404 added. All right, so we're working on a small little restaurant venue locally in town. We're going to add some speakers. All right, so when you go to the speaker tab, again, other side of the screen, speaker, select that menu, you will see that you get a slew of other options as far as manufacturers and brands. Now, you can only connect a community Biamp loudspeaker to an ALC amplifier. Okay, so you will not be able to connect a Bose or Claire or Coda Audio or D&B to an ALC, and that's obviously done on purpose. But the Community Professional library here gives you all the options. And I know in this installation, they have a small little bar stage. They do some acoustic stuff. They do, comedy night. So we're going to do a pair of IC6s. So let's choose iSeries IC6. We're going to do a pair of 1082s. All right, so IC6 1082, it'll give you an application type, passive full range. So this is what's written into the preset library when we create these, okay? And we're going to choose quantity 2. We're not going to put them in parallel mode. We're not going to do them in high impedance. Not going to do any array groups, and we're just going to hit add. And you'll see that 2 speakers showed up. All right. Now this stays open because I hit add, not add and close. There's also a dining room where they have some ceiling speakers they want to put in. So we're going to do D series. We're going to select D6. Okay. And full range. Now here, we are going to do quantity 10. All right, we are going to put these in parallel mode, and this is just visually how they're laid out. We'll do horizontal. The parallel quantity has to match the quantity if you're going to do them all in the same speaker run. So we're going to match these at 10. It won't let me go past 8 until I turn high Z mode on. Okay, high Z mode is on, and I know I'm going to tap these at 30 watts. 70 volt, 30 watts. Now we can change that after it's loaded. I'll show you how to do that. So we'll go ahead and hit add. I added it twice. So if I did that by accident, I can simply click on this and hit delete, and that'll go away. All right, so I can make these bigger too. Just hold down Control while you're in the window and scroll. So I got my 1082 over here. This is for the little bar stage, the lounge. I can rename these. I can make this left. Make this the right one. This is going to be a dining room area. And if I hover over this, you'll see the hover shows up. There it goes. Yep. 10 D6s, 30 watts at 70 volts. Okay. So it's telling me it wants 300 watts at 70 volt, giving me an impedance value. So that's really nice. It shows you everything there. Going to make that say dining room. Unfortunately, I can't spell today, so I'll change that. All right. And then there was also a patio that they forgot to tell us about. So we're going to go back to speakers, Community Professional. We're going to do some DeSono EX S6s since there's overhangs, but it's an outdoor patio. And we're going to choose 4 of those. And again, parallel mode, because we're going to put these on 70 volt. Turn that on, make sure the quantity and the parallel match. And we're going to tap these at, actually, we're going to do 3 units, no 4 units. Tap these at 4. Yep, add and close. Perfect. So here's my EX S6s. Again, if I hover over that, 320 watts, 70 volts, 15.31 ohms. Okay, now we added the amplifier that we're going to use. We added the loudspeakers we're going to use, and we can move these all around. You can even put an image behind here if you want. Okay, next, we're going to go to the link tab. Now the link tab is where we assign the loudspeaker to the amplifier channels. And it's a very simple click and click programming thing. So click on the speaker we want here. So this is the 1062, and I know I want to put that on amplifier channel 1. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now Armonia will try to follow along. So it'll highlight the next one. If we don't want it to be the next one, we can just click on the one we want. But in fact, we are going to now click on that second 1062 or 1082, I should say. And we're going to stick that on channel 2. Okay. Our distributed ceiling speaker system for the dining room, we're going to stick that on channel 3. Okay. And then our EXS6 distributed system for the patio, we're going to stick that on channel 4. Okay. So going back to the add tab, if I want to relabel this patio for my own organizational needs. Okay, so add link, we've now linked. Now the next step would be to match. So virtual amplifier, speakers, programming, add link, match. All right, so when we get to the discovery tab again, you'll see, hey, look, that 1604 I updated is now current. That's good. We're using a 404. So we're going to click, just like we did in the link tab, where we clicked on the loudspeaker and we clicked on the amp channel. We're going to do the same thing in the match tab. We're going to click on the amplifier and turn orange. And we're going to click on the amplifier. Now, when I do that, I should get prompted to turn on synchronization. Now, this will hold up until we click this button here. So the top right-hand corner of the screen, synchronization needs to be on. Okay, so this allows the setting to write to the amplifier. Okay, so synchronization has to be on. Click and click. And then this will hold here until we switch screens. Okay, so I always say go to the option arrow. We call it the option arrow. I'm not sure if that's what it's officially called from the PowerSoft team, but we call it the option arrow. We'll click on the option arrow, and then you will get prompted to read or send. So Armonia has detected that the state of the following devices differs from the desired one. Please select read if you want to read from the device, send if you want to send to the device. So when we're programming these amplifiers for the first time, 99% of the time, we're going to send. So we're going to hit apply. And this system design is now going to push to the amplifier. You'll get a candy cane around the amp. And then when it connects, it'll go away. So there's a couple of things to check now to make sure we're connected. Bottom right-hand side of the screen, you'll see that this says 1 of 1. Okay. What we do now, we go into add link match, staying on the option arrow. We're going to double click this amplifier. Okay. We double click that amplifier. We are now inside. Okay, so this software has a lot of places where you can make these changes and make these adjustments, and I'll show you a few things here inside, and then we'll go back to the design and config tab in the other windows and show you as well. But you can see the first one, the scheme. This kind of gives you a snapshot overview of what's happening in the amplifier. These are our inputs. This is our matrix, our routing. This is any EQ that's being applied. These are the loudspeaker presets that we have loaded. Okay, so this loads the FIR filters and all of the limiting settings that are required for the loudspeaker. And then this is our output stage. Okay, so if I want to go in and now set my Dante devices, and if you notice, I have Dante running. I have controller open on my other screen. I'm going to subscribe to channels 1 and 2, and you should see Dante now. There we go, perfect. So I have Dante coming in on 1 and 2. So to set your inputs, okay, source selection, second tab on the menu here, okay? The factory default from the amplifier. So out of the box, the amplifier will pass signal 1 to 1 analog. So if you feed analog input on channel 1, you'll get output on channel A. Same thing, 2 will go to B, 3 to go to C, 4 and D. So out of the box, it'll act like a quote unquote dumb amplifier. It'll pass signal 1 to 1. The configuration in Armonia is that it's set for first active priority Dante, and then a fourth failover to analog. So out of the box, channel 1 is looking for Dante, and then if it sees no signal, it'll just pick up the analog feed. Okay. Channel 2, same thing, Dante. Same thing with channel 3, or I should say input 4. So these are your inputs: input 1, input 2, input 3, and input 4. Each input has 4 priorities, and that's one of the things people do slip up on when they're programming these. They'll set 1, 2, 3, and 4 on input 1, and they'll get only signal coming in on channel 1. So yeah, unfortunately, that does mess things up a little. But these are your 4 physical inputs, okay? And then each physical input does have 4 priorities. So let's say in this system we like Dante. Dante's working great. We're not going to have an analog failover or any other inputs failing over. We can simply force the strategy here, and this will lock out the other inputs. Okay. Same thing with channel 2. If we don't have any other inputs coming in, we can just shut those off. And then on channel 3, if we want to just shut them off completely, we can just turn these to none. Make that none. And then the fourth one, we can just go none and none. And I'm just clicking on the little arrow. You get the menu, and we're just going to shut those off. And then again, if I really wanted to here, I could just force these over and shut them all off completely. All right, so we have input 1 locked into Dante 1, and input 2 locked into Dante 2. All right, and you'll see that you have the Dante name that does display from controller in ArmonaPlus. All right, now that's great. Go back to scheme. I got Dante 1 and 2 coming in. Where are they going now? So now I can make these two inputs go to any one of these outputs. And how do I do that? We're going to do that in the matrix tab. All right, so the next menu down is the matrix. So this basically is telling you what input is going to go to what outputs. Okay, so right now you'll see that there is output on A and output on B because I have this turned all the way up. If I turn this all the way down, so I'm just holding with my mouse and sliding down, or I can double click and make it full 0. Okay, so I want true stereo system, left channel coming in on 1, right channel coming in on 2. And then for the distributed zones, I just want to mono these out. So I'm going to turn up 1 and 2 on output C, and I'll turn up 1 and 2 on output D as well. All right. If we wanted this all to be mono, we could just simply do that, and that'll mono out with no effects to the audio quality. All right, keeping it stereo, like that. Now there are some little quick, easy presets here. If say this was just something coming in all mono, and we wanted to just make it all mono, we could click that preset up here in the right top hand corner of the screen, apply changes, and it'll make Dante 1 go to all the outputs. Okay. But for our purpose, like I said, we're going to turn that off. We're going to make this true stereo. So this up down buttons, or I just double click, or you can just hold your mouse over the tab and slide it up. All right. So let's mono these out again. Great. All right, so I've set my matrix. Going back to the scheme to double check things, you see my Dante inputs coming in. You see that this is routed input 1 going to A, input 2 going to B, input 1 and 2 going to C, input 1 and 2 going to D. All right, so if I were to unmute these, and Health Plus will get angry at me in a second because I don't have speakers connected to this amplifier, you'll see output going to each channel. Now, the other thing to mention, when you are doing 70-volt distributed systems, especially using a 404, there is a dip switch on the back of the amplifier that you do want to activate. Okay, so you see that I've already activated that 70 volt. If I went ahead and shut that off, reach over to my amplifier here, shut that off, you'll see that this now says low Z. But we know this is a 70-volt system. We want to make sure that that dip switch is turned on. and 70 volt comes back on. So there you go. So you can see that in real time. Now, another thing to mention too, there are attenuation controls on the front panel of the amplifier. So the left side front panel that comes off behind the mesh, there are blue knobs. If you were to attenuate those blue knobs, you'll get a reading here of what your attenuation is. So on site during commissioning, install, if you just need to make quick adjustments, you can turn those knobs. I highly recommend leaving them turned full clockwise. And a lot of times guys get on site and not getting any output. Check your attenuation knobs. Somebody might have touched them. When you're in ArmoníaPlus, you can see those knobs. They're set to 0. That means they're full. They're at full volume. All right. Okay, I'm gonna mute these again. Simple system. So let's say now we want to take a look. Want to add some EQ here. This is the advanced EQ, so you get multiple layers of EQ processing here. Some shading. You can mute, switch phase, and then add your delays. The second EQ option, you get 8 bands of parametric, high pass, low pass filters. Okay, and this is per channel. Okay, and then the third one is actually the waves filter. This is locked because this is actually the preset, the FIR preset for the loudspeaker. This is also where your limiters live. And again, these are all locked as well. Live impedance, just showing live impedance of the output channel, and a little diagnostics page, which shows the GPIO processing block. If you were to use GPIO triggers from the back of the amplifier, this is where you would enable them. All right. But going back to the EQ, we do lock these. This is the FIR, so technically we're not letting end users see what's going on here. But if I wanted to just give you guys a sneak peek, I could actually go in here and type in magic password, hit apply, unlock it again. Those are unlocked. Now, when I go to this filter, now I will see the FIR curve. All right. So some presets have this unlocked. Other presets, most presets don't, depending on the intended user and the system. Again, it's our preference as the provider of the speaker libraries. So since I've unlocked this, I can see the EQ that the FIR is generating. I can see my limiters. Okay, it's loaded standard, your RMS, peak, and clip limiter. If you want to experiment with the true power and current limiters, you can also turn those on as well, set their values correctly. Okay, live impedance, like I showed you before. But yes, typically these are locked, but I just want to give you guys a visual example that it does exist and there is stuff going on there. All right, and then some other menus here. The important one's probably down here, which is the option. This will show just general information of the amplifiers, to show you the network. If this installation does require this to stay on a network and you do need to lock it into an IP range, this is where you would go ahead and switch to a static IT, but we're going to cancel that, leave it on DHCP. Like I said earlier, the Dante settings do display inside ArmoníaPlus as well. Okay, and you can change these and they will generate over in controller. Okay, energy save function, you can put the amplifier to sleep, turn on with signal. Nice feature. And the power config, the last one I'll show you, this is actually the current draw and the available power for the amplifier. All right. So if you know you had an issue with power, you asked for 320 amp circuits, they only gave you 315 amp circuits, and you really need to push this but don't want to, you can dumb this down a little bit to make the amplifier happy. All right. All right, going back to scheme. Again, the overview of the system. Now, let's say we want to take a look back at workspace. So we can basically click this option arrow again, get back to the workspace. And let's say this, this venue, go back to the add tab. Let's say they have expanded and they just put on a new outdoor patio that's going to be a live music kind of venue type thing for the summer. So they want to add to this system. So it's our indoor system, our distributed dining room system, our patio. Let's say the patio just got bigger. So they've got construction budget. We're going to make these a little bit smaller so I can add to this window. And you can basically just hover over, select, move these around any way you want. It's just basically so your visualization. All right. And we know the venue, okay, we want to add a, they got a stage that they're putting out back for the, the summertime party crowd. So we're going to add more speakers, which is good. Go to the speaker tab, go to community professional, and live music. We're gonna go IP6. So iSeries IP6. We're gonna give them a pair of 112294 cabinets, passive full range. We're gonna do quantity 2. They're gonna be left, right. So they're gonna be separate. So we'll add and close. And look, we get 2 IP6 1122s. So I can click on these and then I can move them over here. So we're gonna show this as like a separate venue to the left. Okay. So that's my left, right. And if I want to line these up, I can hit Control, select them, line bottom so they match. Well, better example if I was like that, and I wanted to line them up bottom, and they'll match each other. Great. I can name these. So this is going to be 1122, or I can just make it main left. Click on it. Main right. Perfect. Okay, so those are my 2 main speakers. And of course, live music, we need subwoofers. When the DJ night, we need a subwoofer. So we're going to add another speaker. Community professional. Let's go iSeries IS6. And let's just give them one solid double 18 subwoofer. Now the application here, you got 100 Hertz high pass or an 80 Hertz high pass. You can change this once we get into it, but for loading, we're just going to load the 80 for now. Quantity 1, leave all that alone, add and close, and we get a double 18 subwoofer. If I want to turn that, I can orientation. There we go, double 18 subwoofer. So we have the indoor stage, we have the dining room, we have the patio. This patio is actually the same location, so this is going to get, we're going to leave that in place. So visually for me, outdoor stage, new and improved patio with outdoor stage. Perfect. Now, we got to power these. So we have to add an amplifier. So we're going to go to amplifier here. We're going to add a community professional ALC. We're going to add a 1604. All right, quantity 1, hit add and close. Now we get a 1604. Just like we did before, we added speakers, we added amplifiers. We're going to go to link next. When we're in link, now we are going to assign loudspeakers to amplifier channels. So my main is going to go on channel 1. Other main is going to go on channel 2. Then I have a subwoofer. Well, the subwoofer, if I hover over it, shows it wants about 1400 watts RMS. Rule of thumb, I typically double RMS, so I'm looking for 2800 watts around ballpark for that subwoofer for full SPL, full output. I got 2 channels of a 1604. Well, what am I going to do? I'm going to bridge these. So I'm going to give this a full 3200 watts, 4 ohm, lots of headroom, very good for subwoofers. All right, so how do I bridge these amp channels? Well, I'm going to click on this one, hold down Control, click on this one, and you see the bridge icon shows up. That's all it is. Click 2 amp channels, hit bridge. This now becomes a bridged pair of amp channels. All right, so now I'm going to assign this subwoofer to that bridge pair. And we are done. All right, we added the live performance system, okay, to the new patio. Patio system that was already there is existing for background or for playback. And I'll show you a neat little routing thing we can do now. Let's match it to an amplifier. All right, so I know I have a 1604 in my rack. I'm going to click on the 1604. I'm going to click on the amplifier. And that will link. Now, again, prompt, click on the option arrow. And it's going to prompt me to read or send. All right, and we are going to send, since we're writing that program, to that amplifier. Hit apply. And now on the bottom of the screen, see a quick little candy cane around it, let it do its thing. Now connected, bottom of the screen now says 2 of 2 because we are physically linked to 2 amplifiers in the network, okay? Where do we go next? Well, let's go to our option tab, option arrow, and double click the 1604. Aha, what's going on here? Well, I have analog also being fed to the 1604, and that's how they're going to run this system. So we know that the main performance system is going to take an analog feed off a mixer, but we also want to have background music coming through that system as well when the analog feed's not there. Well, how can I do that? I'm going to select my source selection, and right now, because Dante is not patched, let's repatch Dante. Dante will take the priority since Dante is set as the first active priority. Now let's say I want to change that. Okay, so input 1, let's turn this to none. And then we can't assign analog 1 to the first priority if it's assigned to the fourth, so we have to shut it off. Okay, so we're going to make this analog 1. Okay, and then on input 2, we can do the same thing. I'm going to shut this off. And then we're going to shut this one off. Okay, we're going to make this analog 2. So that's the right channel of my mixer for the stage. And we're going to make second priority Dante 2. Did I do that on the first one? I did not. Analog 1, Dante 2. Now, why am I making this Dante 1? So yes, Dante is going to be our failover for analog, but it's different signal. Okay, so the analog left-right is the output from the mixer. The Dante signal is what's going through the restaurant, what's going into the inside bar, what's going to the patio speakers. So when there's live performance going on, the Dante is muted. Okay, so band's playing, I have inputs coming in on analog 1. I'm going to jump up to the scheme here and show you. Analog 1 and 2 are playing, band's finishing up their set. Okay, we're going to kill the analog feed, and the Dante feed takes over. All right, so simply showing what we set as a priority. Priority is analog, the failover is Dante. Dante is a great backup for analog. That's an inside joke. So if we start up the band feed again, analog will take priority again, band starting their next set, analog feed coming through the system. All right, now what didn't we do in this design? We didn't set the matrix yet. So we're going to do that. And yes, analog 1, analog 2, left, right, off the mixer. And we're going to sum mono the subwoofer. So we'll make sure the subwoofer gets 1 and 2. All right. So you'll see I'm getting output on A, B, and C. Go back to the scheme. You'll see that we're getting input on analog 1 and analog 2, going to output A, going to output B, and then the monoed out subwoofer, which is on the bridge channel C and D, shows up as just C, and we have our output. So if I wanted to unmute these, we'd be getting output to our system. Now, nice thing, Health Plus here, another feature inside the software. Health Plus is telling me, well, there's an issue there, Rich. You don't have any speakers connected. And yes, if I had speakers connected, this flag wouldn't come up. But you can take a look at the whole system in general, and these are faulting because, yeah, there's no speakers hooked up. So going back out of that to workspace, option arrow, double click, let's mute these so the amplifier remains happy again. And the Health Plus will go silent again. Perfect. All right. Check our time, 11:46, doing good. All right. Let's take a look at a different kind of system. All right. So we did this one basically is a restaurant bar with the live performance section. Let's do something else here. All right. So let's go back to the design add workspace tab. I'm just going to click in this field, hit Control A, hit delete. I'm going to delete those 2 amplifiers. Okay. I can click here, hit Option A, select all. I can delete all those amplifiers. Now, even though I did that, the two amplifiers that I matched to are programmed and they're still running. So once that program pushes to the amplifiers, you don't have to do anything else. You can save off your file if you need to go back to it at some point, make changes. But once the amps are connected, they're programmed. There's no save, there's no function, there's no lock. It's basically programmed and go. All right. So I'm going to clear all. Let's just start a new project. Okay, I'm going to do new for live sound because that's what we want. Hit OK. I'm going to say no to save changes. And we're starting from scratch. So let's do an outdoor system. Okay. Again, we're in workspace, design, add. I'm going to click speaker. Okay, community professional, and this is a high school football stadium. All right, something we do daily. Go to R series, and we know we want an R252Z for crossfield. All right, we'll add one of those. Quantity 1, no parallel. Okay, that'll show up. We also want to add two R294Zs coming off the light poles to cross the bleachers. Quantity 2, got it. Add and close. So we have 3 R2s now loaded into our project. Now, if I, again, want to make these bigger, click in the window, hit Control, and I can scroll up, make these bigger. Move them around. 52 can go here. 94. All right, so we got our 3 R2s. And top of the press box, we have some R5s we need to add for the center coverage. So again, community professional. I'm going to go to R series. We're going to go to R594Z, passive full range. Now we're going to run 4 of these in 70 volt, quantity 4, parallel quantity just for visual, horizontal, and match. So we need to match our quantity to our parallel quantity, turn high Z mode on. And yeah, let's run those at full 200 watts. All right, so there's 4 R.5 94TZs. And if you hover over it, you'll confirm 800 watt, 70 volt. Now let's say I've already added these to the system and we're actually going to tap these at 100 watts instead. If I want to, if you notice when I click on this, you get these options on the bottom. Transformer settings, I can actually change the whole group. Okay, you can change them all to 100 watts. Now you'll see that it's 400 watts, 70 volt. Okay, or I could even get creative and say, we know the first end speakers want to be 100 watts, but I want to make the center speakers 200 watts. So now 600 watts. Okay, so you can get creative and mix your output settings, your tap settings in ArmoníaPlus as well. And that's going to change the limiters as well. So that's why that's important. Okay. So those are all set. We got our 3 R2s. This one's on the press box. These are on the poles. We're going to add our amplifier. All right. This amplifier, we know because of the power required, we're going to choose an ALC 1604D. Add and close. Again, ALC shows up there. And I do want to make that bigger so I can see it. All right. Same thing. Add, link. We're going to link out speakers to amplifier outputs. So I'm going to put our R2s here, our 52 there, our other 94 on that channel, and our 4 press box speakers on the last channel. So we have very simply configured a high school football stadium in literally 30 seconds. Everything's programmed, everything's done. The speaker preset files are loaded. The FIR filters included with those are loaded. All the limiter settings, very important for high school football, limiter settings. Match, last step, hit discover. If I try to match a 404 to a 1604, that's not possible, obviously. So we gotta make sure we wanna match our 1604 to our 1604. Remember that we must turn synchronization on in order to do that. Okay. And then we need to switch screens. So again, I always go to the option arrow, get the prompt. Okay, so we're going to send this to the 1604 like we did earlier. Going to hit apply. And you'll see that it'll cycle. And we are now connected. All right. So option arrow, double click the amplifier. We now have, these are all set from earlier because I didn't blank them out, so the inputs didn't change. Now, if I wanted to reset these inputs to the factory preset, there's a little trick here I'll show you. Again, software, you can do multiple things in multiple places. So in the workspace tab, if you go to config, you'll see that there's very similar menus. And yes, you can do multiple things in multiple places. We're going to go to our inputs, click on channel 1, and I want to reset these to default. Okay. Reset to default and reset to default. Going back to design, option arrow. Those should all be there. Yep, because my Dante feed has stopped. Actually, no, my Dante became disconnected in controller. That's why it's doing that. So when you reload the amplifier, always double check in Dante controller, make sure your subscriptions are reset. And there we go. Now we have Dante back on. All right. That looks good. Now let's say this is a very simple system and we're not using Dante. It's going to be all analog. Turn that to none. Turn that to analog 1. No priority. Second input, change that to analog 2. 2. Force over that. So just a simple rack mixer in the press box, feeding 1 and 2. We'll just shut these off. Force that over. And you don't have to. I mean, if you're not feeding it signal, it's not going to do anything but creature of habit. Off and off. So now we have inputs 1 and 2 coming in analog 1 and analog 2. Now let's route them accordingly. We want to make these all mono, so we're going to make analog 1 and analog 2 route to A, B, C, and D. So we just need to make sure these are turned up all the way. There we go, and then we'll turn them off 3 and 4 since those are not active. So now I have analog inputs 1 and 2 going to outputs A, B, C, and D. So all of my speakers are getting signal now. All right. If we need to gain shade these a little bit, if I want to bring down the press box speakers a little bit, so I know that's on channel D. If I want to bring down the press box speakers, I can bring those down. If I want to do any kind of EQing, in addition to the FIR filter, which is locked, and the limiters are locked, but they are there, I guarantee you. All right, that's where those can be done. Okay, just another example. All right, so I'm going to go back to that 1155. I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint. Got a couple more slides. Show you guys. There we go. All right. So ALC, obviously you saw some design examples that we did live. Here's another design. You know, IV6 arrays, very popular. Power those off at 3202. Okay, and then we want some subwoofers. We got 8 IV6 118 subwoofers. We're going to bridge 2 of those 1604s down to 4 channels. And what would that look like in ArmoníaPlus? Same thing we just did earlier. We have our 2 arrays built. We have our subwoofers built on the bottom. We have the proper amplifiers on the left. When we link them all together, okay. Same thing with a little more complicated outdoor high school football stadium, using some R252 maxes, using a pair of our 0.596 maxes, and then of course subwoofers make everything better. Going to bridge another 1604 in ArmoníaPlus. This is what it looks like when you do the layout. Okay. And then when we link those all up, now these are biamped since they're the max units. So you see that your low frequencies are on a bridge channel, 2 bridge channels of a 1604. So if we go back to the screen, you'll see that's a 1604. These are all 1604. So each one of those is a 1604. And this is done in split mode. Okay, so there's a way to split these in here, and I can go back and show you that. If anybody has any questions after. This allows you to assign left the low frequency and the mid-high to separate amp channels, which is required since it's a Biamp unit. All right. So low frequency is mid-high, and then a full range is an R5 96 max. Same thing on that. And then our subwoofers, the bridge channels for the subwoofers. Some LVH 900 active plus. Here's where ALC becomes really fun. So yes, 11 amp channels to make this all happen. What does that look like in ArmoníaPlus? Well, you load these as individual modules. You'll load the high frequencies, you'll load the mid frequencies, and you'll load the low frequency of a 909 AP20, okay? And then you will go ahead and link all those channels accordingly like we did earlier. So your high frequencies going across the first 404, your mid frequencies are using 3 channels of this 404, and then we're using bridge channels of 1604s for all the low frequency devices. So a lot of different systems. And again, it's all pretty much the same thing. You add your amplifiers, add your speakers, and then link, and then match. Okay, so add, link, match. All right, so quick summary. Hopefully this was informative for everyone. Your A+ Marketplace, first step, create your MyPowerSoft account. Make sure your ALC amplifier models are downloaded in addition to your loudspeaker preset libraries. Your network settings, DHCP, initial programming. All right, make sure your network interfaces are toggled on and active so we can talk to the network. Always choose a new project for live sound. Again, you can use the installed stuff. The Armonia 2.0, again, has a lot of nice features. A lot of their amplifiers do Dante sharing. Ours does not. That's why some of those options can trip you up when you have to select input sources and signals and stuff like that. So simplified version, obviously the ALC is your amplification, your FIR processing, your protective limiting, and your EQ. If you need all that signal routing, distribution, management, control, touchscreens, that's what Tessir is for. All right, in the workspace, design tab, simple, add, link, match. Add your amplifiers, add your loudspeakers, link your outputs, match to your physical amplifiers, okay? And then what we call the option arrow, that'll jump you into the amplifier where you can assign your inputs and your input priorities, route your matrix, and then do any fine tuning of the EQ delay of your loudspeakers. All right, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you. If there's any questions, you can email the team, support@biamp.com, or visit us on Cornerstone, support.biamp.com. I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. Happy New Year, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.